Hi, hello everyone. So last time what we did is interleaved buffer, and this time we're actually going to deal with uniform buffers, and that means we're actually going to set up camera as well, so that we're going to change our world coordinates to be well, to be easier to work with 2D games. So what we're going to do in this video is essentially this. If you imagine our world and we had coordinates like this, -1 here and 1 here, but we want to change that now to go to from 0 to 800 and from 0 to 600. 600 is now below, and it's you're probably used to this if you're working with 2D games or if you ever developed apps. So the coordinate system is usually going positive here in x, and then the y's, positive y's downwards. Okay, so let's get started with it. So what we're going to need in this video is GL matrix, and that's mathematics library that I'm going to use. It's just going to provide us with our orthographic projection camera and well, basically matrices and vectors. And also you can download these assets. I have already unpacked them in assets folder. So these are the assets that I'm going to use for the game. I'm going to leave them in the description of the video below. So let's get started just with installing the package that we need, and that's going to be npm install gl matrix. So that's the package name, and then we can just save it, and let's see. So we should have it now. So let's just check if we do have it. So in our source, let's say this camera, and then export class. And here we're going to have, well, projection. And that's going to be of type matrix 4. Cannot find it. Let's try to resolve it. No. Weird. All right, let's try to import it like this. Okay, now it works. Perfect. So let's see. We're going to need public width, which is of type number, and public height for our camera, which is of type number. And then we're going to have our public update. Oh no, not get projection, it's update. And then we're going to use, well, basically this projection is orthographic projection. So let's see. So this will change our screen coordinates to the 800 by 600 system. So these first four parameters are quite obvious, and these are basically defaults that I'm going to use, but it's actually got everything to do with the z-axis. So if z-axis is not between -1 and 1, what we render the screen won't be visible. So this is just a projection plane. So basically it specifies it specifies how far can we look into the world. Anyway, you can use those. We're not going to use them in this video series, but if you wanna, you can use them actually to actually move the layers, right? You can move something. We're actually going to draw. So our drawing is going to work like this. Let me just explain this quickly. So we're actually going to respect the drawing order. So if we draw something and we draw something else, and then something else, so this small edge here will be actually covered by this. And then if we draw something else over all of them, this all guys won't be visible. But you can usually move, for example, on the z-axis if you want to have something from behind, or if you want to have layers, right? You can place something in front, back via this, well, basically via z-axis. With that said, I might use it later. For now, it's probably not necessary, so we can just leave it as this. This will work. I don't have view matrix here. You can edit if you wanna. So if you wanna have view matrix, let's actually edit. I'm not going to explain too much because for 2D it doesn't even make sense. But if you do want to have it, I'll just quickly explain what it does, parameters, but I'm not going to go too much into details. So we can have look at matrix 4. So we're going to have 0, 0, 1 here. So that's our position in the world, our eye. Where are we looking at? We're going to look at, sorry, that's the second parameter. So we're looking at 0, 0, 0 coordinate, and then our up. So it just specifies our up direction. So it's usually going, you do want to have epsilon as up. So it makes more sense if you use perspective projection, not here, but then we can also say matrix dot 4. So we're going to have private. So it's going to be projection view matrix. Actually, that's public. In this case, we do need it. So our projection view matrix is going to be multiplication of this projection and this view matrix. And then let's just say, yeah, this is fine. We don't need this, but otherwise it's good. Okay, that's regarding our camera. So what else do we need? So let me see. So now we need to actually have something that's going to create uniform buffer, and I'm also going to explain a bit later. So it's similar to every other buffer essentially. So we're just going to have public static create uniform buffer, and then we can just say it's const buffer device create buffer. That's fine. Uniform. And now actually we're not using mapped creation. Make sure that mapped creation is either false or you don't have to specify it. And we're not going to pass data yet to it. So we're just going to return it. So what's the difference between vertex and essentially uniform buffer? Well, uniform buffer is sort of global, but doesn't have to be. You set it in shader and then you can set value whenever you want. But our vertex buffer is sort of executed like this. So we have our vertex here, vertex here, vertex here, and vertex here. And it's actually executed, shader is executed one time for all of this. And our vertex buffer is just data that will hold vertices. But uniform buffer, it can be just a color. We can set it once, and then we can specify that color for each of these vertices. It's a bit confusing, but you're going to get used to it. When you see it in action, you're probably going to figure it out. So we actually need to use it in our shader now. So we're going to specify layout a bit later. So let me just see my notes because I am prepared, hopefully. So we had this group binding, but we're actually going to push it to group 1 now, and now everything is broken, which is okay. So now we're going to have group 0 here and binding 0 here, and that's going to be our. So make sure to do this uniform, and it's going to be projection view matrix, and it's of type matrix 4 times 4 f. And actually we're now changing our position, like I mentioned, to actually move from the coordinate system that we had here, right, 1 1 to 0 800. We actually need to multiply that via matrix, and matrix is responsible for essentially mapping us. So you can also think of matrix like this. So you have this issue where your screen space is -1 to 1, but you actually want to have it in 0 to 800 space. So you can do that via matrix. So when you multiply via matrix, matrix is going to map from this space to our actual -1 to 1 space that's required by WebGPU. Okay, so we can do this projection view matrix. As you can see, we're not using Z. I might add it in future, so that's why I was not sure about using view matrix, but if you want to use it, you can. I might, like I'm saying, maybe in future. For now, it's probably not necessary. Then I change this. So once again, we need to specify our buffer layouts now. So let's see. We had this, not this one. So actually, first, sorry, first we need that buffer. First we need that uniform buffer, and I'm going to call it maybe projection view matrix buffer. That's probably a good name as any. Projection view matrix buffer. It's of type GPU buffer, that's okay. And then we can just create it somewhere, well, over here. If we run into any issues, I'm going to change that later. So we had our buffer util. So it needs to be of length 16 because our matrix for type 4 is 16 in length. So that's why. So let's see here. What else do I need to change? So here we had this texture bind group, but I'm actually going to have another bind group. So it's going to be called private. So now I'm going to soon explain this bind group stuff. Projection view bind group, and it's of type GPU bind group. So we can create it somewhere where we created a texture bind group. We need to specify layout as well. So let's just say that projection view bind group layout. Then use device create bind group layout. And our entries, we're going to have only one entry. It still needs to be array though. And that's binding 0. Visibility is actually in vertex shader. And then we have our buffer. Maybe we can specify type here. We can just say it's uniform buffer. Okay, we have our projection view bind group layout. And then we now need to say, so this is where you say in which group it's going to belong to. So let me see. Let me see if I can do this. And then maybe enlarge it. Okay. All right. So now these groups and bindings, they're a bit confusing, but they're not that hard. Let's see. Maybe I need a better color here. Okay. So we had here bind group layouts. We had here and here layout groups. So the first one is going to be group 0. So the first one is group 0 here, and the second one is going to define our group 1, which is here. But we also have these bindings. For example, look at the texture binding. So we have binding 1, binding 0. So this corresponds to binding 1, 0, sorry, this to binding 1. So bindings, this one is here and this here. Then we have this here binding, which corresponds to this here. And the groups are defined actually here. So this defines our group here, and group here. So why not have everything in group 1, binding 2? Well, we could almost have it, but usually you do want to have groups because you might not send every piece of data at the same time. So you want to have some logical groups. So for example, something might change once per frame, something might change every 5 frames, something just might be set once and never changed. So that's why you kind of group your data in different groups. And then bindings are just because you need, within the group, you need to differentiate between the types. Okay, that kind of explains it. So you get used to it as well. It's not that super hard. So let's see, close all. Why did I close all? All right, let's go further. So we explained the group. We have our bind group layout. And actually we need to create here this. So projection view bind group. So we need our bind group layout. We said it was projection view bind group layout, exactly. Then we have entries again. So binding 0, and here, resource. Actually, I think I need to check something. Our resource, GPU sample, GPU buffer binding. So let's say resource buffer. and we need to set it to projection view matrix buffer so that it needs to know which buffer it's bound to. But here I actually might have a bug, and that's because our prepare model is called before our buffer, so this needs to happen after, otherwise it won't work, it will complain. Let's see. Okay, couple of more steps. We actually need camera as well. I forgot about that. We specified it but never used it, so we can just set it up here. Camera, that's all right. It's actually not imported, so you just need to import it here. Almost there. Let's see, it's complaining about something. We need to do this camera update and couple of more things. So our bind group texture, right? It's now in group 1. And then we also have to pass our second bind group, which was, sorry. So now this projection view bind group. So projection view bind group is at bind group 0 and texture bind group is now at bind group 1. So we don't see our texture. And why don't we see our texture? Well, if you remember, it is here somewhere on the screen, but as I mentioned, we're now in 0 to 800 space. So we need to change our geometry, and I'm going to change it a bit like this. So we can specify here, we're not going to use these texture coordinates anymore. We're going to use this coordinate system. We're going to have x, and we're going to deal with this later, but let's just specify it at 0. And then we're going to have width. I'm just going to use W for width. And then we're going to have height, actually not 1. Let's just specify 100, 100. And here now, let's use this. Let's just say XY. This is actually going to be not bottom left. Right now, it's actually going to be top left. So we're going to go top left, top right, bottom right, and then bottom left. I'm going to fix these texture coordinates a bit later, but then it's x plus width, so this remains y. So now we have y plus height, x plus width, and then here it's just x and y plus height. So if I save it, we should be able to see, but we don't, because I must have forgotten something. Let's see. No? Weird. Very weird. Let's just see. Did I miss comma somewhere? This is alright, this is alright. Maybe I haven't saved file or something. No? Let's see. This thing does tend to happen. Pause in debugger. Let's just remove that. Let's remove this as well. Still not working. I must have missed something. Is just actually have some to actually use these assets from a game finally, and we can do that. We can just create a small class that's going to be named maybe content. All right, let's see what's happening. Content ts, and then we're just going to say export class content. So here we're just going to have public static player texture of type texture. If you remember, we used this wrapper for a texture, and then we can say async initialize. It can be of promise void actually, and then sorry, we can just say use our texture premiere allow, but we also had this idea of, sorry, not the idea, we were just passing device here because we do need device for our textures. And then you can just use any asset that you want. I'm going to use player ship blue, for example. So it's PNG, and then it was player ship something blue. I need to enlarge this, I cannot see anything. So it was called player ship blue, exactly. Player ship 1, blue PNG. If I save it, nothing happens because we actually need to use that texture. So just in main, let's find somewhere after we get device, we can actually initialize our content and make sure to await it. So you need to await it, content initialize, and then somewhere where we're passing texture, here we can just say now content player texture. Here as well, content player texture, and now we have our player, which is perfect. Let's just see our player dimensions are, so just that it looks right. Here it says 9975. We can change that as well here for our geometry. 9975. And our texture looks right now. So there is this color bleeding, color issue here, a bit of white, if you see on the edges. And we're going to deal with it in a future. It's not that important right now. Once we have more assets on the screen, it's probably then we're going to deal with it. So hopefully you understood what orthographic projection is and how to create these uniform buffers. And that will be it for this video. In the next video, we're probably going to have more sprites. So we just have one sprite for now. In the next video, we're going to deal with multiple sprites. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and until next time.